Hello, welcome to UCP Outside Care Provider Orientation. My name is April Preston. I am the Director of Behavior Services, and I'll be walking you through this video today. Outside care providers are licensed professionals who deliver specialized therapeutic services to our clients and collaborate with our internal team. We want to first say thank you for applying to be outside care providers. Without your support, our students wouldn't be as successful as they are. We accept applications for outside care providers from behavioral and communication specialists, including BCBAs, RBTs, BCABAs, and speech language pathologists. We also accept applications from medical and developmental specialists, including nurses, personal aides, occupational therapists, and physical therapists. Let's go over some of the differences that we have found when working in the school setting versus some of the settings that our outside care providers may be comfortable working in. The school setting is embedded with services from our therapists within the classroom. Your objectives and goals should be linked to the needs of education success. Those goals include functional skills, social skills, and independent skills. And the success of your student is measured by your clinical and classroom engagement data. This setting varies greatly compared to a clinic setting or a home setting for which you may have already been seeing your client. The clinic setting is where a therapist operates with the most control in a one-on-one setting, able to manipulate the variables in a way that is strategic and systematic. The sessions are small and it's typically a homogeneous group. You have tight control and your focus is on direct teaching and training explicit skills and a reduction of clinical significant behaviors. The difference between the two settings, school and clinic, and also home settings, is a wide difference. And we want our outside care providers to remember that when you are engaging in therapy inside of the educational setting, that there will come times when you will not be able to control for the variables. There are other students in the classroom that you cannot control. There are staff members that you are not able, that may not be on the same experience level, or they may be on a higher experience level. So it's a different setting, and we want you to be aware that coming into the school setting, you should be set up for success, knowing that the settings are different and your expectations should be changed with those settings in mind. We would like to first talk to you about building relationships. When we're talking about any therapies, whether it's ABA, speech therapy, occupational therapy, or nursing, the first thing that you should do for best practice is get to know your client, pair well with them, build that relationship with them so that you can provide them with the best care and therapy possible. We also believe that building those relationships should also extend to the school staff. That's your classroom staff, your paras, your TAs, your behavior specialists, coaches, UCP therapists. Building those relationships from the very beginning will assist with all of your goals that you're working towards with your client. UCP has set up a process to make this relationship building process easier for you. At the beginning of the year, we're going to have a meet and greet with our campus administration. This meet and greet establishes the rules and responsibilities and the roles between our outside care providers and our administration on the campuses. This first year meet and greet happens each year in the month of August. We also are going to provide a quarterly meet and delivery of information between our behavior specialists, our health assistants, and our therapy staff so that our outside care providers can talk about the information with their clients and we can review the cases and how we can work together collaboratively to support our students. And at any time, our parents can ask for a teacher conference for the outside care provider to share information. We welcome our parents to ask for teacher conferences and invite their BCBAs, RBTs, nursing staff, and other therapies into those conferences so that we can relay information to our UCP team and collaborate with those efforts. If a parent would like to have information provided from UCP therapy to their outside care providers, we will set up an IEP meeting so that the official note taking can occur and everyone can be put on the notice and made sure that it's um, exactly how we want that meeting to be set up to relay that information back and forth. That can also be done at the request of the parent at any time. Now let's talk about the differences between HIPAA and FERPA. A lot of you that are outside care providers are familiar with HIPAA, the protection of health information when you're working with your clients and their privacy and making sure that you're not giving out any of that personal health information. One thing that our outside care providers also need to be made aware of is that in the education system, we have the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, which is FERPA, and this is also a federal law that protects the privacy of students. This protects their education records and information. So any information that is on an IEP, on their psych evaluations, their report cards, any health plans, all of that is protected by the federal law upheld by the FERPA Act. So when you're an outside care provider and you're coming into UCP charter schools, you're being held by two federal laws. One is HIPAA, so that you cannot provide any health information of your client without the consent of a parent in a written document saying that you can divulge any diagnoses, medication, doctor reports, etc. The same thing happens when you are relaying any information that you may have required from the school, any IEP meetings that you have gone to, or any behavior notes or psychological evaluations that you may get. You are not allowed to provide that information through FERPA, not without getting the school's permission and the parent's permission to put that information back and forth between those stakeholders. I want to draw your attention to two of our ethic standards. One is professional competence. So we expect that our school therapists practice the boundaries of their competence and seek supervision or consultation when needed. If you, as an outside care provider, feel that the skills that you are asked to provide for your client are out of your scope of understanding or your boundaries of competence, we would expect that you would speak to your supervisor and consult on extra skills or lessons or potentially changing your client that you may need at that time. Another section of ethics that we wanted to talk about is dual relationships. So a lot of times as outside care providers, we do build a very strong bond with our families, and we want to have that relationship be very healthy. That helps build that foundation that we're able to provide services. But at the same time, we want to be very careful that we avoid those dual relationships with our students that could impair your objectivity or potentially increase the risk of harm. So some of those would be examples of if an outside care provider is not only providing therapy, but also providing babysitting or, driving clients to different locations or potentially having a different relationship with the family. You just want to avoid those dual relationships because it can make it a conflict of interest when you're trying to advocate and using those different roles. So let's talk a little bit about our ethical guidelines and where we as outside care providers receive our ethical information. So behavior analysts and RBTs receive their ethics from the BACB. Our nursing practitioners and our personal aides receive theirs from the Board of Nursing, and then our speech OT and PT receive it from the AOTA, APTA, and ASHA. And I recommend that every outside care provider become familiar with their own ethics guidelines to guide them throughout their day while being an outside care provider inside of a charter school. I want to give you a couple scenarios and the outcomes of those scenarios to help you maybe and guide you throughout different interactions that you may have. So the first scenario is an outside care provider that attended an IEP meeting to collaborate with the team. The IE team discussed the behavior of the student that was the outside care provider's client. Um, the classroom teacher discussed a second student, and when that second student was brought up in the IEP meeting, the outside care provider took information that she gleaned from that IEP meeting, took it back to her agency, and discussed it with another BCBA. And that information, because she removed or used the information that she got from an IEP meeting and took it back to an outside agency, she actually went against FERPA. And so we had to highlight that FERPA violation and discuss with her the differences that she has between HIPAA and FERPA and how that still applies to her when you sign the agreement that you're going to work within the UCP charter schools. You must keep all educational information private. And so she violated that. And the consequence that UCP deemed was necessary was for that outside care provider to receive a second training of HIPAA and FERPA regulations. And then they were allowed to resume their services inside of the classroom. Another scenario that we've come into contact with this past year is an outside care provider communicated with a client's parent about other students and maladaptive behavior in the classroom. So the parent then spoke to several parents in the classroom about the student's behavior. And of course, the parents became concerned. So in this scenario, if an outside care provider is observing many students, not just your client within a classroom, you cannot then take that information outside of the classroom and distribute it to outside parents. Um, any information that happens, within the classroom, the classroom staff should be reaching out to parents. If an outside care provider has a concern and it's not with their client that they are to work with, we suggest that the outside care provider go straight to the classroom staff, speak to them first, and then try to get the classroom staff to communicate with those parents. So anytime that an outside care provider shares information from inside a classroom, that is a retraining of HIPAA and FERPA. And depending on the severity or depending on the repeated offense of violating any FERPA or HIPAA federal laws, we will have to reevaluate those service needs. Next thing I want to walk you through is some of our policies for our outside care providers. The first policy that we have is our electronic usage in the classroom. There are no photos, no videos, and no audio recordings permitted in any of our classrooms or on any of our campuses at any time with any student. We do not allow any telehealth supervision, and we do not allow any distribution of photos, videos, or audio recordings. The only persons within the classroom that have that capability to take pictures and send any of those mediums would be the classroom staff. If you're working with your client and you really want to show the parent a new skill that kid's doing in the classroom, then that would be something that you, as the outside care provider, need to request the classroom staff to record or take photographs or videos of that interaction, and they will send it through our Bright Wheel system. Any outside care providers found taking photos, videos, or audio recordings and distributing them to anyone, parents, or other staff, or BCBAs, or RBTs, or sharing that with any other persons, will be found to be going against the agreement, and we will have to review the appropriate consequences as far as services available to continue with that particular outside care provider. Our dress code. So this may seem like a silly policy sometimes, and we may feel like, why do I have to adhere to the dress code that UCP lays out? Our main motive for our dress code is to exhibit a professional attire to show our students that professional attire speaks to our experience and our knowledge in our field as outside care providers. We require that all vendors wear a vendor's badge with whichever county for which you work, whether that's Seminole, Orange, or Osceola County. We also require that you wear the UCP breakaway lanyard. Every year, our lanyard colors will change. So make sure that you have the new lanyard for that year, or you will be asked to leave our campus. We expect everyone to have business casual attire. We expect everyone to have closed toe shoes. The dress code that is prohibited is that our ABA providers are prohibited from wearing scrubs. And the purpose for this is that UCP believes that our ABA providers should look as though they are friends or therapists and not necessarily that they are medical advisors for our students. The only outside care providers that are permitted to wear scrubs are any of our health care providers, meaning our nurses, our personal health aides, our LPNs. Those are our outside care providers that are permitted to wear scrubs. We do not allow any open-toed shoes or Crocs. We do not allow leggings or ripped jeans, and we do not allow hooped jewelry. The next part of our is really best practices is what we're going to go over next. And so this really isn't in your policy agreement that you sign with us, but it goes to who are we allowing into UCP charter schools, and how do we want those therapists to engage with our students for our students' success. So best practice engagement would be um, the length of services that you provide. And I'm mainly at this point talking about ABA because ABA is permitted to provide up to 40 hours of services a week, which is a lot. And if you are providing 6 hours, which is a full classroom day of ABA services, then the best practice, that means that that student that you are providing 6 hours of ABA, that they're in an intensive course of interventions with ABA. And therefore, if we come into the classroom and we see an RBT with a kiddo all day, I would assume that that kiddo needs high intensive interventions, and the proximity of that outside care provider should be relatable to the number of hours that that RBT is working with that client. So we shouldn't be walking into a classroom and a kiddo that has an RBT for 6 hours and the RBT is at the other end of the classroom, potentially not engaging with that client. We would expect it to be relational. The second best practice is functional communication. Social skills and daily living should all be acquisition skills that our outside care providers are working on, whether that is ABA, OT, PT, speech, or even our nurses. All of our outside care providers should focus on those three topics or domains and teach acquisition skills um, to that end. So communication, social skills, and daily living. And for our ABA providers, using behavior skills training is the best training modality for our classroom stakeholders, which best practice is that we are modeling and training our classroom staff in the practice in which our students are receiving such a high level of intervention, potentially up to 6 hours a day. Some of the practices that we see that are not best practice are reactive strategies only. So some of our outside care providers have mentioned that they are only there in case their client gets upset. So that would be a poor practice therapy. You are not on our campuses just to de-escalate students. You are there to interact with them to not only facilitate some de-escalation of their behaviors, but also to acquire some of those best practice skills. Another poor practice would be if you have an emergent speaker on your caseload and you are with that student all day long, there should be some form of communication that you as the outside care provider should bring to share and should be training with your client. That is a skill that we would want to relay to our classroom staff and with our UCP therapies so that we can align our communication efforts and make sure that the classroom staff and outside care providers are all doing the same interventions. Speaking of communication, a lot of our students that have behavioral needs lack or have skill deficits in communication. And a lot of our students will have the opportunity to use alternative communication devices, whether that's low tech or high tech. So low tech meaning visuals, PECS systems, and then our high tech would be any student that would use AAC devices. And when we have our outside care providers working with clients that are emergent speakers, we would expect that best practices are used. And some of those would be honoring all communication attempts from the student. So even if the student is not stating the entire word or the entire sentence or the entire phrase, any of those tries or approximations to appropriate language, we want to reinforce that. We want to accept that. We want to say that's good. We want to make sure that we're reinforcing any type of communication, including leading pictures, signing, partial phrases. We want to make sure that the AAC device or any low-tech communication strategies or documents, pictures are always available to our students at all times. We don't remove those when our students are upset. We don't remove them as a consequence for inappropriate behavior. If a student is engaging in high magnitude maladaptive behaviors that could cause concern, meaning that maybe they might throw their AAC device, removing the device momentarily to make sure that everyone is safe and providing a paper copy or some gestures is appropriate, but then immediately giving back the communication device that student is learning to use. We want to always use our least to most prompting when we are prompting AAC use. And then we want to fade in and out depending on what that child's need is to communicate. And then we want to prioritize functional communication. So we wouldn't expect to ask our emergent speakers, which is a new speaker, we wouldn't expect them to say please or thank you. We wouldn't expect them to say a full sentence. So we hope that our outside care providers will keep these best practices in mind and collaborate with our speech and language therapists on each campus to make sure that we are ensuring the successful speaking of our new communicators. Let me talk a little bit about some roles and responsibilities. I know over the years we've tried to identify the difference between our UCP classroom staff and our outside ABA. We talk mostly about our outside ABA providers because we have more of them than any other of the outside care providers that we have. And I think that when we have ABA in the classroom, it can get a little diluted or unclear as to who does what when. So we are providing these two documents that go through each of the different roles and who does what. I'm going to briefly go over this, but everyone will receive a copy of these roles and responsibilities so that you can dive more into what your role is as an outside care provider. So UCP's classroom staff focus on our curriculum, We are the sole responsible care and supervisors of all students on our staff. We are solely responsible for communication with all of our staff, outside care providers, parents, therapists, and all of our stakeholders. And our classroom staff are also responsible for the classroom entirety's behavior management system. UCP classroom staff are also solely responsible for the classroom toileting needs of different students in the class. UCP classroom staff are also responsible for daily data collection of all behaviors in the classroom. The classroom staff are responsible for modifying any materials. They are to differentiate their teaching and the learning of any student in their classroom. And they are also responsible for providing reinforcement for numerous behaviors. And that reinforcement can include praise, edibles, break from task, high fives, parties, group contingencies, etc. They're also responsible for facilitating the engagement between the outside care providers and their students and supporting social skills. Now, our outside care providers, specifically our ABA providers, are responsible for targeted ABA skills. So this goes back to our best practice, which is that our outside ABA care providers are not just data recorders, and they are not just behavior reducers, okay? Our RBTs and our BCBAs that come into UCP charter schools have a contract with that client's insurance that also requires acquisition skills. And so we are expecting that any outside care provider that comes into the school has targeted skills that they're required to get data and practice through different modalities, whether it's NET or DTT, to get the successfulness of those skills. Outside care providers are also responsible for the care and supervision of their client when they are with them. They are also there to communicate. Their communication needs to be with the classroom staff and with their agency. They also are responsible for communicating with the parent, but we ask that all communication that refers to anything that happened within the classroom, that information comes from classroom staff first. Outside care providers can help with behavior management by modeling or instructing classroom staff on different interventions. Outside care providers are not permitted to do any type of physical, mechanical, or chemical restraints of a student at any time. Outside care providers can facilitate toileting programs with their client, but they are not required. Outside care providers should be collecting data on all types of behaviors, including reduction and acquisition. Outside care providers should be providing modified materials that they're using with their client within their own sessions, i.e. token boards, visuals, communications, choice boards. Those materials can be adapted to the classroom and used with classroom staff. And outside care providers are able and should be using reinforcement of varying modalities such as praise, edibles, multiple breaks from tasks, thumbs up, etc. We also expect our outside care providers to be supporting social skills. So if your client has deficits, we expect that you would contrive scenarios and set up practice scenarios for your client to work within the classroom with their peers, facilitate engagement with the classroom, open up that line of communication, coordinate strategies with our staff, and adapt any changes that you feel would help your client be successful. One thing we'd like to add to our orientation this year, with the safety that we are seeing within our schools and different policies that are needing to be made, we are going to extend our emergency procedures to our outside care providers. You will be receiving this icon in an emergency take action in the form of a card that will be placed on your lanyard and your ID so that you can always have this readily available to access in the case that you are caught in an emergency situation at one of our UCP charter schools. Um, After an emergency action has been taken, you'll hear it over the loudspeaker, or someone in the classroom will inform the outside care provider that we are in one of these states of emergency. It could be a hold, a secure, a lockdown, an evacuate, or a shelter. During any of these emergency actions, outside care providers must remain with their assigned clients throughout the duration of the emergency. There isn't any leaving of the building or leaving your client um, during any emergency actions. Outside care providers will be allowed to text or email their supervisors to report their status. So we suggest that you text your supervisor, let them know that you are currently in a secure and you are not able to leave your client. And that's to get information more from your supervisor. Should you continue with the service for a certain amount of time, or should you not, just to get their opinions? Campus staff, not outside care providers, will handle all communication with parents. We want to keep that line of communication streamlined from the school to the parents. Our outside care providers will not be contacting any parents during an emergency action. Campus personnel will announce when normal movement around the campus may resume. At that time, you can leave your assigned client and exit the building if that is what your supervisor directs you to do at the end of the emergency action. At times, there will be moments when our outside care providers or our classroom staff have concerns about different activities that are happening inside of our UCP classrooms. Um, we would like to have the opportunity to fix any of those concerns that come um, from our outside care that have been observed. We just ask that you first immediately communicate your concerns with the classroom staff. Uh, we request that you document that you've communicated those concerns with classroom staff first. Then we expect that you relay your concerns also to the school administration and record that effort. Next, you would communicate your concerns with your agency and with your caregiver. If after all of those contacts have been made and you do not feel that there has been resolution, you can email myself, the Director of Behavior Services, so that I can help facilitate a resolution. If an outside care provider has not discussed the concern with the classroom staff or the school administration before they've contacted their agency or caregiver, we will have to have a discussion about the sequence of events for addressing concerns so that you provide us time to address those concerns. When we are not permitted time to address the concerns, that's where relationships are broken down that we may have built up between ourselves, outside care providers, and parents. This school year, we're going to have some consequences to policy breaking. So the policies that we are going to consequate would be: if you are out of dress code, you will be asked to leave the premises. If you have broken a HIPAA or FERPA standard, we're going to ask that you complete the retraining orientation and print out the certification, and we'll upload that to your folder. If we're having issues with collaboration with campus staff and it's a repeated issue that we cannot find a resolution, we will need to review the current therapy schedule to see if that is conducive for a successful collaboration for the success of the student. So here are the UCP's frequent concerns. If you take anything out of your orientation today, these are the three things that I would be keep on the top of my head for when I'm working in a charter school. The first thing is that if you have a concern, you are to immediately inform the administration and classroom. Failure to communicate those concerns are where we have broken relationships. The next one is no entry will be given to any outside care provider that is not wearing the correct UCP lanyard and identification badge. And then lastly, we want all providers to provide and to share, to collaborate all of their goals, interventions, and progress with classroom staff. That includes all of the acquisition skills. Our outside care providers, you're not data recorders. You are behavior changers, whether it is OT, PT, speech, nurses, or ABA. That's all for our orientation today. If you have any questions or you need any further information, you can contact me at april.preston@ucpcfl.org.